Talk about a crusher. Yes! Oh!
Are you kidding me?
And gone!
Joining me today is one of the most iconic voices in sports broadcasting. You've heard him call everything from the NFL to NBA to March Madness, a legend behind the mic. Let's welcome Ian Eagle to Schoolyard Sports. Ian, thank you for joining me.
Appreciate it, Lane. Great to be with you, bud.
Great to be here. Thank you. Glad we were able to make it happen. You've called everything from NFL, NBA, college basketball, and you've done it for a long time. But when you step in that broadcasting booth every time, what's your first thought?
First thought is this is its own entity. No matter how many games I've done, whether it's NBA, NFL, college hoops, this game that I'm about to broadcast is its own thing. And you can carry your experiences with you. You can bring your preparation, which is incredibly important, but you can't script how the game is going to go, and you can't predict what's going to happen. So you have to live in the moment as a play-by-play announcer and be as one with the event. So the way that I've always viewed it is each day brings something fresh and different. Each event brings something fresh and different. And I try to bring that sense of wonder no matter what it is I'm doing. It could be an NBA game in the middle of January that may have very little bearing on the standings. It could be an NFL game that isn't necessarily the best matchup of the week. It could be a college basketball game where the team had very high expectations before the season started, but they haven't lived up to it. Yet it requires your best effort, and it requires everything you've got to try to make that broadcast special and unique in some way.
And I think the fans appreciate that. Like if you're calling the March Madness National Championship game, or you're doing a Syracuse women's basketball game, which I know you used to do. So you treat every game the same way, and I think the fans appreciate that.
I hope so. And the real basis of that is I am excited to be there. I am pumped up to do this job. This is what I dreamed of doing as a kid. So I don't take any of that for granted. And then the pride factor that comes into it when you put a lot of time and energy into making sure you're ready for it. The preparation is key, but then performance is the other aspect. And you can prepare, and then not perform well, and the preparation goes out the window. You could perform really well and not do the preparation. And in the key moment where you need the right statistic or identify the player in the moment quickly, if you haven't done the proper prep, there's a pretty good chance that your performance will be affected. So that's how I've tried to view it. I've been doing the NBA for 31 years. I've been doing the NFL for 28 years. Same with the NCAA tournament. Those numbers just keep growing, but my love and passion for doing this job never wanes.
Nice. Okay, let me throw this to you. We see a lot of rebuilds in sports, whether they're successful, whether they're not. We just saw Oklahoma City Thunder win championship. Yep. What made their rebuild so textbook, what they did right, that so many other teams miss on?
Well, first and foremost, they're a small market team, so they have to be really smart in how they go about their business. They accumulated a lot of assets via the draft, and then they knocked it out of the park on those picks. And they weren't all number one overall picks. In fact, they weren't number one overall picks. They found guys that were bargains for where they drafted them, not just in the first round, but sometimes in the second round or via free agency. And that's the other part of it. Trades, free agency, you've got to strike in a manner that is going to help your team and make financial sense. Now they're spending. They've won the title. They want to maintain their players. They want to try to build a dynasty. They recognize that they had guys on rookie contracts, and now you got to pay the piper. And they're doing it. It shows you a dedication from ownership. It shows you a strategy from management and a head coach that made sense for them. Development coach who came up through the G League himself. So he recognized what it was like to really grind and maybe not have the most impressive resume beforehand. He'd been an assistant coach and, again, developmental coach collegiately under Billy Donovan. He ends up being the head coach of their G League team, and they see that he's the real McCoy, and they end up making him the head coach of the NBA squad, the Thunder. Mark Daigneault has been fantastic, really smart, forward-thinking, understands how to handle athletes, today's athletes, does it with a lot of knowledge behind it, but also listens. It's not just his way or the highway. He recognizes that it is collaborative. So to me, this is now the template that teams would like to follow in order to rebuild. The issue with it is that it's not simple, and you've got to hit doubles and triples, not just home runs along the way. There are plenty of players on their roster that could have been had by any team. Guys that either slip to the second round or trade assets that they found that they believed could fit into their culture. And they had the jigsaw puzzle and they put all the pieces together perfectly. It's going to be hard to simulate that if you're another franchise.
What I appreciate about their championship was this was GM Sam Presti's second go at it. He drafted Kevin Durant. He drafted James Harden. He drafted Russell Westbrook. He had a homegrown rebuild that was done before. They never won a championship. They made it to the finals. He made the mistake of not extending Harden, not extending KD. That's why you see them extending Jalen Williams, extending Chet Holmgren, and extending Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and that's why they won a championship. That's why they're going to win a few more.
And you learn from your mistakes. This is a trial and error business. I'm happy that Sam Presti got another opportunity to do it. Some franchises would not have been as patient and would have made a change. They recognized they had a tremendous decision maker, someone who had a clear plan. And look, obviously, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander turned out to be even better than they thought. That deal was made, if you remember, because Kawhi Leonard was going to move on to the Clippers, and he wanted another star player alongside him. At that point, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had played 1 year in the NBA, and he showed a lot of promise, but he wanted what looked to be more of a guarantee, Paul George, than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That's part of the reason why you don't have players also doubling up as GMs. That was really his call, and the Clippers went along with it because they wanted to convince him that the Clippers were the place for him. The Lakers were going hard after Kawhi. He was an LA native and he wanted to go back to the West Coast. So they make that move, and there was success for LA, and there were growing pains in OKC, not necessarily on a personal level for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but for a team, they needed to go through some things before they started to show progress. And when they did, it clicked, and it clicked in a hurry.
Now I want to ask you about this, because you're the voice of March Madness. And there's been talks in the past few years, past few months, past few weeks, even past few days about expansion of the NCAA tournament. Yeah. I'm totally against it. What's your opinion on it, if you can speak on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I started doing the tournament when it was 64, and the idea of adding on in any way was considered taboo. It seemed perfect. Everybody said, you don't mess with it. 64 works. Well, eventually they started the first four in Dayton. I ended up calling 3 of those through the years. And from a broadcast standpoint, it was among the most challenging years of my career because you were cramming for 4 teams, and you then had to get ready for the first and second round. So the time that I normally would have taken to prepare for the first and second round, I was using for the first 4, and then I was trying to squeeze in as much information as I could before I got to my next site while still focusing on the games that I had to call in Dayton. It was a serious juggle, and it was a roller coaster ride. Made it through, did it, pulled it off, but I don't look back at any of those years and say, man, that was fantastic. It was tough. So I was among those that thought, I don't know, do we need the first 4? But you know what? It has added a nice element to the tournament. It's given the tournament a little juice at the beginning of the week, and we have seen some teams move through the first 4 into the final 4. That's not the norm, but it has happened. So once you see that it can happen, that should give teams incentive and motivation that they can go on a run, just get the ball rolling. So now let's extrapolate it over maybe the possibility of adding yet another round, if you want to call it that, but really more of a first 8. And, my sense would be that most people will be against it initially, but what we've seen is if it's done right, people will adjust, fans will adjust, teams will adjust, coaches will adjust, broadcasters will adjust, everybody will adjust if there's some rationale and logic behind it. If it's simply just a money grab, then there's going to be more hesitancy. If there's true value to it, if we feel as if there are still deserving teams that are just not getting in, then it's worth at least kicking the tires on it. I don't know if it's going to happen right now, but it does feel as if it's going to be inevitable.
Well, for the Power 5 teams that do make the first 4, I think it's right for them because if you're playing in a major conference in college basketball, it's cannibalism. You're getting beat up by your own every week where you don't really see teams run through their conference as much anymore. In the Big Ten, you don't see it. It's cannibalism everywhere. Teams are being up on other, which is why you see maybe a Pac-12 team a few years ago, UCLA, go from the first 4 to the final 4. But then for the 16 seeds, I think it's a little bit interesting of a dynamic where you get the automatic qualifier, but you're not really in the NCAA tournament yet. That's the interesting part of the first 4.
Yeah, and it's a legitimate point. And look, there were years I did the A-10 tournament. I've most recently done the Big Ten tournament for CBS. And there were definitely a couple of those years where the A-10 felt they were deserving of 3 or 4 teams. And oftentimes they only got 2. And sometimes the winner, if it was a shocker, Richmond won it one year. They stole a bid from one of their own conference teams because the NCAA tournament was not going to open it up to another team. So I don't know, I'm trying to remember that year, if it was Davidson or if it was Dayton. Somebody did not get what they thought they were going to get from the A-10 tournament because they fell short. A shocking team that was not on the bubble got in with the automatic bid, and it ends up costing your own conference a spot. So expansion may change that. Look, here's the thing about it. As we know, Lane, someone's always going to be upset. It doesn't matter how many teams you opened it up to. Whoever, if it's 72 teams, the 73rd team is going to be ticked off. And we saw it last year in the college football championship. Just because you're in the mix and in the conversation is not usually enough for the fan base and for the school itself. The odd team out often has a beef, and they'll usually wear that as a badge of honor into the following season. I remember with Florida State, I'm sure you do as well, and there was so much vitriol that was in the equation because of it. And the next year they had their worst season in maybe 60, 70 years of Florida State football. So, look, there's no rhyme or reason to this. And now more than ever, I think what we're seeing is a reload every year. Now, some schools can do it because they have the money, they have the wherewithal. Other teams cannot. There are schools that have a good team and they lose their guys in the transfer portal and they cannot restock as quickly as some other teams. Kansas is coming off a rough season. They spent the most NIL money in the country last year. So normally you'd say, well, that's a problem. What's going to happen at Kansas? I think we both know they're going to reload, and they're probably going to be just fine for 25-26.
Well, we had Dusty May on a few months ago, and he was talking about his strategy is really just reloading the team. There was a lot of great players on Michigan this year. Trey Donaldson did a great thing for Michigan, winning them the Big Ten tournament. And then he leaves after 1 year. That's the new wave of college basketball. That's the reloading part of it.
Yeah, and, it's interesting. It's the how does it affect me world. I'm not an egomaniacal person or myopic person by any stretch, but what you just laid out, I do think, how does it affect me as I'm preparing for sometimes 4 or 5 games in a week, depending on my schedule, when NFL, NBA, college basketball cross over and intersect. if I've had a team in a previous year and I had my boards from a previous year, I had a lot of information that could translate over to the following season. And now I'm realizing that that information is irrelevant because most of the teams do not have the players come back. So take Michigan as an example. They had a great year. They had a terrific run in the Big Ten tournament. They made a run in the NCAA tournament. Dusty May, by all measures, was highly successful in his first year at Michigan. And you just nailed it. It's a whole new team. So all the info that I had from last year that you think in the old days would carry over and I could use in some form, I prepare in a way that I don't get 80% of the things into a broadcast, but I like to know that I've done the work. And if I need something specific on a player, I'll be ready for it. And now what used to be a nice little bonus from the year prior to this year, it's not the case anymore. Now, I might see Donaldson on a different team, and
Miami.
I'll have an advantage potentially if it pops up on my schedule.
Let's think of college basketball here. I was in the building for Duke Houston, the Final Four game. It was a great night. First game was great. Yeah. Auburn, Florida. I was surrounded by Duke fans. It was an awesome game, and it really it collapsed so fast. It was such a shocking ending to where it all just happened so quickly to where if this thing gone different, then this would have gone differently. From a broadcast perspective, you were calling that game. How much of a shock was that game to you? Where does that rank on like shock game moments where that just happened? Duke was just up 14. They just lost the game.
Yeah, I think 10 things had to happen the way that they happened for them to lose that game. And the killer, I was thinking about it. I had dinner with Bill Raftery recently, and Bill and I were talking about that game specifically, and I reminded him that Cooper Flagg was called for an over the back off a missed free throw.
And now there's a challenge rule to reverse that.
Yes. And look, that was a shaky call. And it sends Houston to the free throw line where they knock down a pair, and it changes everything in that game. Now, look, they had made myriad mistakes prior to that. They couldn't get the ball inbounds. So
I think they should have changed the inbounder many times.
They should have. The concerns that we had, Raph, Grant Hill, myself, Tracy Wolfson, our production team, when we were talking about the matchups, production meeting prior to the Final Four game, we had Duke in the first two rounds down in Raleigh. The concerns were they just had not played in close games. They did not have that kind of experience. They blew out teams throughout the season, and their plus-minus margin of victory was so large that it was hard to get a gauge on whether or not they would handle the big moment. They were cruising along. They played really well, I thought, at times in that Houston game. And when they hit the wall, they hit it hard, and they didn't have answers. So your thoughts are right along parallel with mine that that was a shocker. I did not see that coming the way that it happened. And my feeling, this really means nothing. As we know, these are opinions, and everybody's got one. But if it was Duke, Florida in the national championship game, I think Duke's your national champion. And that reminds you just how precious this is, and the sliding doors theory of sports, that if Duke gets it done, we might be talking about that team and that accomplishment and Cooper Flagg on a whole other level compared to what we're currently talking about. Florida had an incredible tournament. They were the best team. They won the title. That's all that matters. But I still have this gut feeling that Duke was a better version of Florida if they went toe-to-toe in the title game.
So what I think for Duke is they had two early losses. Close games to Kentucky and Kansas. And both games came down in the last possession, and Cooper Flagg turned the ball over both times. It's interesting because Duke was a star-studded team. Cooper Flagg didn't have to be the only one to touch the ball on those two plays, and then they run the same play in the Houston game, and you say those plays in November are built for the plays in March, but he didn't deliver in March.
Yeah, it's a great point. And also, when it came right down to it, if my memory serves, Tyrese Proctor had the ball in his hands late in that game trying to make it happen. And it was a nervous possession, and that helped seal the fate of the Duke Blue Devils. So, yes, the possession you're talking about where Cooper missed the short pop, came up short on it, they had one last desperate chance, and the ball never touched Cooper's hands, if my memory serves correctly.
Proctor had to shoot up a pretty much half-court three.
Yep.
Let's switch gears here for a second. You're switching over to Amazon for your NBA coverage, which is new for not just you, for the entire league, really for the whole entire sports world. What are you looking forward to? What have they told you? Are you excited about the team they're assembling with you?
Yeah, really excited. Everybody that they have brought on board loves the NBA. And I know that would seem like a prerequisite, but I can honestly say that. There is a joy in which everybody on the crew broadcasts and presents the league, and I think that's going to show in the coverage. That doesn't mean that you're not critical. That doesn't mean if something is sideways, you don't point it out. What it means, at least in my opinion, is you can feel it when someone wants to be in that chair, wants to be sitting courtside and has a headset on, and it translates to the viewer because they can sense that. And that, to me, is very tangible and real. And I just look up and down their lineup, and what Amazon has put together is a crew that will do their job the right way, with passion, with joy, recognizing this is a new relationship. And the hope is, obviously I've been doing this a long time, I'm not going to change the way I do the games. I'm not going to change the way I approach, but I will adjust based on who's sitting next to me. And I think there will be some mixing and matching. You'll get different personalities. You'll have some of the guys that are set to do studio pop in, do some games as well. So you'll hear some new voices potentially that you haven't heard on game coverage. I think it's going to be really cool. And I know from the people that are at Amazon and Prime Video how badly they want to do this the right way, and it matters to them. Watching their Thursday night coverage on football, you know that it's about doing things at the highest level possible and presenting games in the highest level possible. And it's going to be the same mentality here with the NBA. This is a really big moment for the property and for the expansion of sports on Prime Video.
Well, I know everybody's excited to see it. I got one more question for you. With the media landscape changing the way it is today, what advice would you give to someone trying to break into sports media?
Well, I think the biggest difference now compared to when I was breaking through in the 80s and early 90s is the ability to go out and do things yourself. The DIY mentality is real. And back then, you could only get an opportunity if somebody gave you one. And now you can create your own. So younger broadcasters, college broadcasters, high school broadcasters that ask me for advice, I'm very direct. You've got a camera on your laptop. It doesn't cost that much to buy a microphone. You can have your own studio and you can do your own stuff from anywhere that you are. And that's a power that needs to be taken advantage of. Looking into that camera, practicing your stand-ups, getting used to the idea of being on camera, being on microphone. Back in the day, the only way to do it was for someone to hire you to do it. And now, whether or not you have the ability to now beam it out to the rest of the world and go viral and have people follow you, that's a whole other ball of wax. I recognize that doesn't happen overnight. But what you can do is every day look into the camera on your laptop, talk into the microphone that you've plugged into your laptop, and work on your craft. That is something that's within all of us. And polishing your skills is on you as the individual, nobody else. And to me, that's the clearest advantage that young people have today compared to the way it used to be. But use it. Don't take it for granted. Don't just put it off to tomorrow. Do it today and try to perfect what it is you want to do in your life and learn. Be a student of this. Consume. Everything is available to you. If you want to be a play-by-play announcer, there are so many games that you can call up online at a moment's notice. You want to be a talk show host? There are so many talk shows that you can watch, or podcasts that you can listen to or view. You want to be an anchor? Same deal. You want to be an interviewer? It's all there. You can be a student of this every day of your life. To this day, I'm a student of this. That will never change. I'm not a finished product. I have not reached that point of my career. I don't think I ever will. I'm always trying to learn how to get better, how to say something in a different way, how to find new phraseology, how to be more efficient in my vernacular, how to put a period on things, how to use an exclamation mark when it counts, how to lay out and let the crowd take over if it's appropriate. All of that, that's on my list every year to improve and get better. No matter how many years I've banked doing it, it's still a priority for me.
Well, you nailed it. And I think that's what's perfect about my generation is that I have the opportunity since 5 years ago to film a show for 30 minutes every week and talk about what I want to talk about. I don't necessarily need to have someone give me the opportunity. You can go out and do it, which, I mean, that's great advice.
No, and I salute you for it. And trust me, it's going to pay off tenfold for you. The fact that you've had this chance and you've taken advantage of it goes a long way and puts you at a clear advantage when now the next step comes, whether it's in college, after college. These are real experiences. And by the way, you're not alone. This is available to young people. If I could have done this back in the day, I would have absolutely jumped on it. I showed up at Syracuse. I had no broadcast background other than a dream to do this. And whatever I did in my shower, that was it. That was the extent of it.
Well, we appreciate it, Ian. Thank you so much for coming on Schoolyard Sports today.
All right, Lane. All the best, bud. We'll do it again.
Thank you. Let's do it.